Om Yam Brahma Varnendrarudramarutaha Stunvanti Navoishtavoy Vedai Sangapada Krama Upanishadoi Gayanti Yam Samagaha Jan Yasvastita Tadgatena Manasha Pashanti Yam Yogino Yashantam Navidyuhu Sura Suragana Devaya Tasmai Namaha. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Our eternal salutations to that one who is the truth of life and existence, and whom the devotees call by various names. Our eternal salutations to that one whose glories are sung in the different religious scriptures of the world, but whose infinite and undying grandeur no mortal mind can comprehend. Our eternal salutations upon that one upon whom the devotees meditate in the shrine of their hearts, realizing an ineffable presence in their deepest contemplations. May he prompt our minds toward the path of truth and righteousness. May she reveal herself into our souls and dispel the gloom of death, fear, doubt, and darkness. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Devim Prasanam Pranatarti Hantrim Yogindra Pujam Yugadharma Patram Tam Sharadam Bhakti Vigyana Datrim Dayaswarupam Pranamami Nityam. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. O Sharada, propitious goddess, killer of misery in souls resigned, savior of religion in every age, by saints and sages worshipped, O Mother kind, give us love and wisdom, thou. O grace incarnate, to thee we bow. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahana Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishovahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman, the reality, protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings, and may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. Namaste and aloha to all of you who have gathered here live at our ashram today, and also to the live streaming audience which is present with us. Some of the students from the ashrams in Oregon and the ashram in San Francisco, and probably students from India, if the timing is right, as we all gathered to look into this second series of a class called Shakta Advaita Vada. Don't get daunted by the Sanskrit words. Shakta just means divine energy, and Advaita means non-duality, and Vada means path. So if you put together the Divine Mother path, usually called Shaktism, which is present in all the other darshanas or philosophies of India, with the Advaita Vedanta, which is the thread running through the pearl necklace, as Krishna often describes it in the Gita, then you have a very comprehensive path indeed, and one that many of us in this day and age love to follow, because, as we were saying in satsang this morning, it combines the best of what you might call the Almighty Father in the Jewish and Judeo-Christian kind of perspectives, religiously speaking, along with this Divine Mother reality, Shakti, which is usually not so prominent and is sort of hidden behind the veils. We also must say that those veils belong to her, like the veil of nescience and the veil of name and form. Those are really her realms, so it really behooves us to propitiate her, as I just chanted, Devim prasanam pranatarti hantrim, O Mother in, or Lajapatavritti nicham sharagyan daike, O Mother in modest veil is the translation. So she's always veiled and behind the scenes. But if you want to get beyond those veils which keep you from a deep glimpse of reality, for instance, of the Almighty Father or of the Advaitic non-dual reality, then quite often best to propitiate her and ask her to remove those veils. Sri Ramakrishna was one of those who was extremely successful in worship of Divine Mother of the Universe, called Mother Kali. And in the 1800s at the Dakaneshwar temple, he was able to gain vision of her, very rare, and utilize it in his spiritual practice to benefit all living beings. So he's most current on record. In fact, they call him the Kali Avatar. So has brought the idea or the truth of Divine Mother reality prominent in this age, and also attended by his divine consort, Sri Sharda Devi, who was my teacher's teacher, his wife too, together along with Swami Vivekananda are directly responsible for the reason why I'm here, for instance, teaching the Vedanta to all of you and throwing in good, healthy amounts of Tantra and Yoga and Samkhya philosophy from India too, because all of those are called darshanas, clear ways of seeing. And we have been looking into these various aspects called tattvas and mahatattvas, that is, principles and great principles, using this particular chart on your left. And that, of course, is filled with tattvas and mahatattvas. We looked at the main, maybe beyond tattva, when we talk about Brahman, or again, Almighty Father, or you could call it Tathagata Garbha, or Supreme Reality. That which you gain by attaining moksha, freedom, jivan mukti, being a living, liberated soul. Or Father of Yoga called it kaivalya, or sampragyata. There are different names for it in Sanskrit, which we don't have words for in English, which point to a vast cross-section of beings who have gone into these states and who have emerged to proclaim the existence of Brahman. In fact, not just the existence of Brahman, but that all is Brahman. That is, Brahman is that word in Sanskrit for the non-dual reality. And so it brings another veiled axiom forward for us to contemplate. It's very strange that the two greatest things, Brahman and Shakti, are those that are often the most veiled. That is, vision of the non-dual reality and a vision of the dynamic power that operates all of these other tattvas. Tattvas like the word, Om, we call it in our tradition. Moksha and kaivalya, as we just mentioned, reaching a living, liberated state, free of the trammels of things like nama, rupa, desha, kala, nimitta, which we will look at a little bit today. This platform she's sitting on, that's the definition that Swami Vivekananda gave us in the late 1800s when he came here for Maya, that flummoxing word. Call it sometimes humorously the queen of all four-letter words. So nama, rupa, desha, kala, nimitta means name, form, space, time, and cause and effect, respectively. And that's a good definition for veils. The idea is, and it's a sort of unique one for most people, is that whenever you hear a name or see a form, that's a veil over the formless reality. So form naturally and spontaneously veils formlessness. And you have come out of formlessness, as Sri Ramakrishna said, out of the eternal, which he calls the nitya, and have entered into the play of life. You have to have a form to do that. So you left your formless nature and you took on a form. Now let's see if you can associate with it but not identify with it, is what the Indian seers are looking for. What the yogis like you to do is to just play in the form but not get identified with it and attached to it, and therefore start to suffer bondage. Start to fall into samsara, the Buddhists call it, or into maya, this four-letter word we're just talking about. So a lot of it is remaining conscious of what maya is. And it's not just delusion, and it's not just illusion. It's not like, say, a mirage in the desert, where you think there's water and there's not. And it's actually a definition and a metaphor they used to use for Maya before Vivekananda came along and said, no, really, Maya is a statement of fact. It's not just an illusion. He has a lecture called Maya, Statement of Fact, in his great works that you might want to read. So and they ask him, what do you mean by that? It means name, form, space, time, and causality are real as long as you associate with them. There's another vada for you. It's the drishti, shristi vada. They call it. Drishti means seer, and shristi means like projection. Sometimes they call it even creation. So the creation is real as long as you see it. But when it's gone, can you really call it real anymore? That is, when you go into deep sleep tonight, where are you when you're not dreaming and you're not awake? You went formless. And so now it's time for you to analyze formlessness. And the conundrum comes up in meditation when you sit. You say, I'm trying to get beyond my mind. I'm trying to get beyond thought. And if I can do that, then I get into a good meditation where I start to feel some bliss, or I start to feel some balance, or maybe even the peace that passeth all understanding. I can even feel that. But the thing is that I can't really feel that until my thoughts run out. So they say, watch your thoughts until they dissipate. And then when they dissipate, it's empty. You see, everything's empty. And so the student comes out of that state, says, well, I did what you told me to, guru or teacher. I got rid of name, form, time, space, and causality in meditation, and I just saw nothing there after that. And is that all there is? And then the teacher responds, says, now that you've achieved that, pratyahara, sometimes they call it, meditate on that emptiness. And meditate on it for a long time. What you've actually done is taken the external world and the internal world. That is, world number one is outside, waking, and world number two is inside, dreaming or conceiving, right? You can live in your mind. People do. And pretty much eschew the outer world. Monks are rather like that in their early stages. Scientists are like that sometimes. Hermits are like that, you see, people who renounce the outer world and live in their mind. So you're really taking the outer world and the inner world and you're rendering them into one indivisible state. And that state is formless. And if you meditate on formlessness long enough, then you will see the light that everyone's talking about. Or if you're mystically oriented, you might hear the sound. Sound is called shabda, om, the sound of the word. In the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God. Or you might see the light. I am the light of the worlds, as Christ pronounced when he came out of his 40 days, in the forest. 40 days is a good time to spend trying to remove veils. That is, veils of a very major kind. Not veils that we would think of as everyday veils, like, oh, I wish I wasn't so sleepy, or I wasn't so restless, but veils that have to do with a cosmic design that come falling down, say, in deep sleep tonight over you. And it's very hard to rend them away, you see. We had that last week, the curtain of nescience chart, if you remember. It was one of our more recent charts where we looked at that veil that comes off of Mother that's of a design that starts in a causal state, comes into the subtle state, and comes all the way into the gross state. And as the veil penetrates worlds like that, it gets thicker and thicker, so that down here, that is out here in the world, it's very difficult for people to even know that there is such a thing as truth, what to speak of comprehend it. See? They're just thinking matter, matter, matter. Matter and senses, objects, enjoyment, death. You see. Energy, maybe if they get a little deeper, you see. But energy goes deeper than just the Big Bang Theory. It goes into that man does not live by bread alone. It gets into an energy that's internal, that carries your thoughts. Energy that carries your thoughts is called prana, psychic prana. And so if you get interested in profound depths like that, it's like a deep sea diver, you see. It doesn't stay on the surface where he gets rocked about all the time in a boat. He decides to dive in where it's all peace, 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 and he'll study the depths. So that's what you're going to be doing when you want to meditate on Brahman, or the word Om, or Divine Mother Shakti in her formless form. Those are great principles. You know, the principle, again, there's no word in English to really describe truth. That's why when you realize it, you don't talk so much like I'm doing right now. You just shut up. But then maybe you want to, if you've caught a glimpse of it, if you get inspired by it, want to come out and share it with others, like Lord Buddha did after his nirvana, and want to attest to the fact that not only does God exist, but God is existence, with a capital E. And that hopefully will, as we said this morning in satsang, make people fishers of men, as Christ said. You'll begin to raise your children in the Dharma. You'll begin to get interested in speaking of the Dharma to others and perk their interest, because they're also potential dharmis, you see. They have all that knowledge back inside of them. Sometimes they describe the guru, the Sufis describe the guru as a person who sits by the river and sells water. This truth is in everyone. You see, it's a matter of how thick those veils are. Then, see, Ramakrishna used to say that some people's gold is buried under mounds of earth, and some people's gold you just brush away a few pebbles, and there it is, shining. See, so how much have you brought forward that atmic potential? We would say. Vivekananda used to say, the Atman is the same in everyone and in everything. But there's two things you have to remember about a blanket statement like that, is that number one, it may be the same in quality and quantity, but the vehicle that it resides in is more refined in the case of a human being than, say, an animal, plant, insect. See, Atman is there in those too, they say, but how much can the plant and animal and insect manifest that divinity? Mankind has it in spades then. And more than that, a seer or a seeress has it even in deeper spades, you see. They manifest it fully. So that's one thing you have to remember about the Atman. It's in everyone and in everything, but light reflects better on a mirror than on a leaf or a rock. So the vehicle that it's in is very important to make sense out of that kind of Advaitic statement. So this ushers us into some of these great principles that are shown on this chart with Divine Mother. You can see also that Nirvikalpa and Savikalpa Samadhi are here, that is formless Samadhi and wisdom Samadhis. There are different levels of Samadhi. We looked at the covering power and the revelatory power in terms of this Triputi, Prakasha, Vikshepa, and Avarana Shaktis. Those are powers of Mother. One of them veils totally, one of them distorts, and one of them reveals. So we want to get a hold of that revelatory power and apply that to everything, especially to our studies and to our meditations and so forth, and actually also to our sufferings. If you apply Prakasha Shakti to sufferings, then all of a sudden they reveal the reason why you suffer. They'll reveal your karmas to you, and then you can do something about them. Otherwise, it stays veiled, and you stay helpless, caught in the regime of name, form, time, space, and causality, without knowing that there's anything higher or better for you. We looked at Brahmagyan and Prema Bhakti. We've looked at all sorts of things. Last week, we looked at Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, the Trinity, and I brought a chart on that to show what a high station the Trinity is in our tradition. Every good tradition, it seems, has mention of some sort of Trinity. threes are very important in many religions because dualities tend to bind, but so you need a back door or even a front door out of dualities like pleasure and pain and life and death and so forth. So life and death would have to be accompanied by eternal life, as Christ has introduced that term, you see. So if you meditate on triputis or threes, then you have this prakasha shakti, this opening, see, this freedom that you can avail yourself of to benefit yourself and benefit others. So in this case, the trinity of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is a rather famous one. Brahma is the creator, and we would rush to probably substitute another word for that in Advaita. If you're talking about the Shakta Advaita part of the Vada path, then you'd have to say projector, please, not creator, because nothing doesn't exist. You can't create something out of nothing. Something that always exists. Just a matter of whether it's manifested prakriti or it's unmanifested prakriti. And we will talk a little bit about that today too. I brought the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg chart for you to see. So something always exists, so you can't really accept creationism as an ultimate solution, philosophically speaking. And then Vishnu is supposed to be the preserver, you see. So we say, yes, sustainer, preserver, those are okay. There's no real problem with that word. But then when you say Shiva destroys, then you come forward advaitically and say, please, let's change that word to dissolves, returns everything back to its causeless, formless state. Because if nothing's born, nothing can ever die. If nothing's ever created, then it can't be destroyed. So you're just going back and forth between one of these very high and deep cosmic dualities called manifested and unmanifested, or if you prefer, form and formlessness. And you're not a very good scholar or meditator of formlessness yet, if you're a Westerner. It hasn't been given to you yet to ponder formlessness. And maybe you haven't had the time or spent the energy and time to look into formless reality and sit for hours that it might be necessary to do in order to penetrate through the veils of name and form and time and space based in cause and effect. So that's where we brought out the Shiva chart and went through the rounds. So I went through all the tattvas, all the principles on this chart, which shows Nilkanta. Shiva, just like Mother, Shiva has many names, and for this particular chart he's called Nilkanta. If it were in color, this chart, which is very expensive to do, so I haven't done it, this dark space in his throat would be blue, see, because he has drunk the poison that was churned by the gods and the demigods, see, called suras and asuras. They got the snake, Vasuki, which is the underlying substratum of everything, got Mount Mandara, wrapped Vasuki around it, and began churning, and they dropped the churn into the ocean of existence called Ekarnava. It's a very famous story in the Itihasa of India. Itihasa means scriptural history and mythology and various stories that they have there. So when they churned this, and the reason they did it is because all good things would come out of that churning. So the cow of plenty, Kamatu, came out, and Lakshmi's diadem came out, and the winged horse came out, and they were busy grabbing these things for themselves. And they didn't notice that this acidic poison was leaking out of the process too. You can't have good without bad. See, like Swami Vivekananda said, saying a good world is like saying hot ice. Nothing's all good here or all bad. So in this churning process, which you can imagine, Mount Mandara really is mind and its desires, see, because everyone's churning, their minds are churning with thoughts, aren't they? Based mostly in desire, so that they can procure certain things out of this ocean of matter. So it's all, of course, has its great symbology. Just as profound, maybe even more so sometimes, than Sri Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield at Kurukshetra, in which the Gita is based on. So in this case, this churning process then has resulted in this somewhat Hawaiian word here, hala hala. And very hard to find it in Sanskrit dictionaries. In fact, I couldn't. And so it must be some sort of sound that Vasuki made when he sputtered up the poison, you see. Something like that. And so they came to call it hala hala, you see. And this is this poison that when the gods and goddesses found out that the poison was eating through their world, the lokas, we'll look at some of the lokas today. They're down here, some of these flowers at Mother's feet, you see. Some of the lokas are all these flowers. In other words, the kingdoms of heaven within you are the lokas. They're more than just the physical universe. My father's mansion has many chambers, is the way he put it. So this poison was undermining their loka, eating through the foundations. So they called Shiva. And Shiva will know what to do. He's the god of destruction. He'll know what to do with things that destroy. So he came and gathered it all up. And this representation is into a conch shell, which it has its own symbology. And then he quaffed it all. See? And it would have killed him. It's a sacrifice, yagya. I have a chart on that, which I hope we'll get to today, but maybe next week. He quaffed that poison, and it would have killed him if it had have reached his stomach. But the Divine Mother herself, Shakta Advaita Vada, remember, was there, and she pressed her throat here so that it stayed in his throat, and that just turned his throat blue. So now he's called Nilkanta. And so there, in India, if you go around, you'll see this image quite a lot, not only in Shaivite homes, those who worship Shiva, but everywhere, because this idea of the transmutation of poison into nectar got a hold of the human mind, especially those who are interested in yoga, because yoga wants you to face off with the poisons of the world, not to hide from them, not to run away from them, but those negativities are open doors into higher reality. Your imperfections are open doors into higher reality. They're called malas, not the kind that you do your japa on, malas, but the kind, mala means imperfection, but it's an imperfection that's like an unripe fruit, that when this desire or this imperfection in you ripens, it's so set up as to put you closer to reality when it gets ripe. It's again like lifting a curtain. Curtain you work with for a while, and you've preordained that that curtain will be rent apart at a certain point and give you a vision of God. It's an interesting way of looking at errors, misconceptions, and imperfections, isn't it? Inconsistencies. That's the way the Tantrists look at them. So, tracing it back to yoga and then to this chart, Shaivism, a lot of people interested in making spiritual progress were very, very much inspired by this idea of Shiva transmuting poison into nectar. There are songs written about it I could sing you. But whatever the case may be, we looked at this chart last week and went through the whole rounds of everything. And I told you I'd bring a few things before we finish it out, and that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to concentrate maybe here on the non-dual sun of wisdom and the third eye and the sky of awareness, because these are Almighty Father types of principles. And also it'll bring in this full-blown awareness called Kundalini Shakti, which is here. Kundalini Shakti and the chakras. See, this strand of sugarcane has all these, as we well know in Hawaii, has all of these portions in it. So these are just like the spine and its centers, you see. Only, of course, this would be the subtle spine. The physical spine is just an external representation of that. But the subtle spine holds these lokas, holds these worlds, and many, many millions of subtle nerves are connected to them. And beings, souls, when they leave the body, whether it be at the time of death or when they dream or when they go into deep sleep, travel along these subtle nadis to these different centers. Your dream states will actually become a lot more lucid and a lot more real when you become aware of your mind using the psychic prana to travel to the kingdoms of heaven within you consciously, and also go formless consciously in deep sleep, called Sushupti. So Swapna dreaming and Sushupti, deep sleep, are two other states of your consciousness that they want you to explore. And of course Shiva is a past master at that kind of exploration. He presides over the three worlds, gross, subtle, and causal. See, those are the three worlds, basically the outer, the inner, and the transcendent, or waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. It all has a correlation. There are even songs sung about it that we like to sing sometimes. Jaya Shiva Shankara Hara Tripurari Pashi Pashupati Pinakadari Jaya Shiva Shankara Hara Tripurari Pashi Pashupati Pinakadari. This is by Girish Ghosh. Did you know he wrote songs? One of the sometimes they call him the Bohemian devotee of Sri Ramakrishna. He was the one that was addicted to drink and gambling and so forth, and got a complete character remake when he went to Sri Ramakrishna, though Ramakrishna did not declare to him that he had to quit drinking, or just said, stay in my presence for a while. And Girish became this glowing devotee over time, gave up all his shenanigans by himself. And so, yeah, he would know, wouldn't he, about transmuting poison, to getting out of bad habits, turning himself his mind into a higher frame of reference in mind, consciousness. So he wrote this song. He says basically, salutations to Shiva, the triumphant one who embodies the highest good, who is the source of contentment and the invincible destroyer of all afflictions, who is the father of all living being and whose trident protects the three worlds. So this is the idea. You see on the shaft of the trident, unmanifested prakriti. Everything that's held in potential that hasn't come into form yet, which will come into form once the three worlds are in operation. That's her business. She will, with the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, will put these things into order. So you don't have to look at this as anthropomorphical beings. If deities put you off, or God with form is a problem for you, no problem there, really. You just have to look at them as energies, certain kinds of energies. And you can align them with something as simple as waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. You can say they're all my own conception, and it won't be an insult to them. All the gods and goddesses exist in me, just like trees and plants and flowers and oceans and universes and suns that take 11 centuries to fly around in a jet going 500 miles an hour are all inside of me. See? All came out of a concept. See? And that's called sankalpa. See, the mind's power to formulate worlds of name and form and time and space. They're all formulations, they're all projections. They're not actual creations or locations in space and time that are fixed, you see, in their position. They are really the kingdoms of heaven within you. And if you go inside and, as we used to say in the early days, spock them out, see, then you will find that my Father's mansion has many chambers, as Christ said after he meditated in the wilderness for 40 days. So Girish Ghosh should know about Shiva, so I wanted to bring up that song for you. But let's look a little bit at some of Shiva's let's call them aspects here. This is Jnana Chakshu. We didn't take it last week because I didn't have the chart with me, but here's really the research that I did in a nutshell on Jnana Chakshu. When Christ said, "If thine eye be single, thou shalt know the truth," then he was talking about that third eye. We call it in Kundalini Yoga system the Agya Chakra, yes? And so it's below the Sahasrara and above the Vishuddha, you see. So just above the throat chakra, and the physical body is a outer representation of this, is this third eye center. And I found reference to it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different religions. I was very captivated by the fact that it, not just that it was on some Hindu poster somewhere in the 60s and everyone saw a goddess or a god there with a third eye, and thought how odd, or how strange, or how esoteric, or how attracting, or how enchanting, or how interesting. But actually, what is the deeper significance of it, and why do so many beings of so many different religions all acclaim it, you see, acknowledge it? So we'll get to that in a minute, but basically this quote here by Shankara again is very beautiful. He says, "The world is nothing but Brahman, because Brahman is the only reality. See this always with your spiritual eye, and with an unruffled mind, and in all circumstances. For what is there to be seen here by the eye, other than the mere objects of the senses? In like manner, to that one who knows Brahman, what is there to be seen at all, wherever the intellect may play, except divine reality?" So, juxtaposition there. Here on earth there's really nothing to see but the objects of the senses. In the same way, to a knower of Brahman, there's nothing to see but Brahman everywhere. Ramakrishna used to say, if you put on colored glasses, you see everything yellow. See? Yellow glasses, sunglasses. You take them off. So that's why putting on the eyeglass of Brahman, so you see everything colored Brahman. All of this then turns into divine reality for you. And there's no schism anymore between relative and absolute, or samsara and nirvana, see? Or samadhi and maya, see? Or creature and creator, or God and mankind, spirit and nature. There's no more distinction. The line of demarcation's taken away. It's like Sri Ramakrishna say, draw a line on water with your finger, it lasts all but a couple seconds. You see. But put a stick over it, looks like two bodies of water. See. So the ego, thick, unripe, is that stick. It takes everything and makes it two. You noticed? 2 eyes, 2 ears, dual mind. In fact, dual mind turning into disparate mind, turning into distracted mind, turning into distorted mind, turning into fragmented mind. The two then becomes many without any foundation. It doesn't sound like a third eye to me, and it doesn't sound like if thine eye be singled out, shall know the truth. So, therefore, when Shiva, we talk about Shiva's third eye, you talk about the Jnana Chakshu. Jnana means wisdom, Chakshu means eye or to see. The eye of wisdom. Now, you can see what it sees. It sees and utilizes the gross senses. That is, smelling, tasting, seeing, feeling, and hearing are your gross senses. Remember to connect them with earth, air, fire, water, and ether. Smelling goes with earth, tasting goes with water, seeing goes with fire, feeling goes with air, and hearing goes with ether. So you've got 10 already, don't you, that you're supposed to become conscious of in yoga. This is like early yogic teaching. It's called alambanic meditation. It's not taught in hatha yoga classes or anything. You have to really be serious about yoga to go after this kind of understanding. You know, you want to have an eternal life, develop a spiritual life, become fisher of men or whatever, you need to know this cosmology. So right away you have 10 things that you can connect the dots to. You see, my gross senses connect with the 5 gross elements. So that's what the third eye is overseeing. See, it's the real seer. Seer. See. Now it also sees and utilizes the subtle senses: odor, flavor, visibility, tangibility, and audibility. Those go with these too, right? Earth with smell, with odor, and water with taste, with flavor, and so forth. So now you have 15 that are connected. You've connected the dots to 15 of your own kingdoms of heaven within you. See, your own chambers of God's mansion are starting to open up to you. And it's taken you from the waking state in the gross world into the inner world. But it's taken you there with some lifelines. Now you can go in without any fear. You can actually let go of the physical world, and your dream state and your meditations become more real. See? You feel more at home in the formless realm. You begin to acclimatize yourself to higher cosmological, philosophical, and spiritual regions. And you begin to feel comfortable there. This is good. See, this is good. You should have never left off being comfortable in your formless nature. Now, also sees and utilizes the causal senses: solidity, liquidity, luminosity, homogeneity, and all-pervasiveness. Now you've got 20, you see, and they connect with each other right on down. Certainly earth, smelling, odor, and solidity go together. So now you're actually beginning to know how the mind can formulate and dissolve things. It has the power of solidification in it. Your mind can bring out, projection style, the worlds of name and form and time and space. If the mind wasn't there, would they be there? Is the question you have to begin to ask yourself. If the mind didn't vibrate, or put it this way, when it doesn't vibrate, is the world there? Because in deep sleep, you have no world, you have no ego, you have no children, you have no money, no desires, no needs. You just feel subtle bliss, and when you wake up you say, that was a great deep sleep. I don't know what happened there, or where I went, or who I am, who I was, but I feel great again. And the 20 minutes of that will make you feel great, when 8 hours of dreaming will leave you a nervous wreck quite often. Gaudapada says that in his Karika. Those beings who don't know the A, the U, of the M of Om, and they leave it disconnected, they become nervous wrecks. In other words, my waking state is real, but my dreaming and deep sleep state, they're nothing. I don't know the other two parts of my being. I don't know the other two forks of Shiva's trident, you see. I think that only the physical world is real. So now I'm a materialist, a sensualist, a hedonist, or worse. So I've left part of my kings of heaven unexplored. Haven't looked into those chambers of God's mansion. They're not real to me. See? So you can see how the third eye then, this chakra, is aware of everything, let's say, below it, see, or external to it. Now let's look at the other side of the chart. You can see how the third eye sees reality. This is from Krishna, basically. He says, Avinashyanam. I'm sorry, can I read it here? Avinashyantam, Avinashantam sees reality as imperishable. Right away, birth and death go away. No more do you have to even sing unless you want to. Namrichor Nashanka Name Jati Beda Pita Naiva Me Naiva Mata Majanmaha. And we can sing to Shiva. Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham Om. And as you sing Om, the A, U, and M comes out, and you are Shiva, and those are your worlds, and you make all the connections. You get my gist. Now I can quit singing and start talking again. So this is the connecting power there in you see. And so you're going to want to see all as imperishable. In India, if you think death is real, you've entered the fifth and lowest hell. First hell is ignorance of your true nature. Second hell is egotism. Third and fourth hell are connected, attachment and aversion. And the fifth hell is called fear of death. A snake is afraid of a frog. He should be having it for dinner, but he's afraid of a frog. That's you and death. See? You should be transcending death with every thought, yet death has you as a condiment on its table. Human beings are condiments for death. Let's reverse that process. I'm quoting right out of the scriptures. Human beings are condiments for death. Mm-hmm. They give themselves to death. They give themselves to the illusion of finitude. There's a good mantra for you, or a good koan. Worldly people, ignorant people, give themselves to the illusion of finitude, to the illusion of death. And they never know that they never see reality as imperishable. That all this coming and going is mere nonsense, Vivekananda said. Where's the time when the soul will come? when all of time is in the soul? Where's the space to which the soul will go when all of space is in the soul? See how beautiful? An illumined soul would explain it to you. Time and space is all in you. And when you know that, then see reality is imperishable. You'll begin to see it. Also, sarvatra, sama, and let me read it close up. Sarvatra, sama vatistam, sees reality dwelling equally everywhere. Sees reality dwelling equally and everywhere. What did I just say early on? That the Atman, the divine nature of all beings, exists equally in quality and in quantity in everything. But it's just the mechanism that it abides in that is different. So, you need a human body. Manus yatvam. Human body is what you need to realize the Atman. Cow's body won't do, horse's body won't do. You know what I'm saying here, right? The story in the Upanishad is the gods, so, suras. And some of them went to the Lord and said, "Give us a body to enjoy things on earth." So he gave them a horse's body, and they got into it. That won't work. I just stand around eating the green all day. You see. My mother-in-law says, "Oh, it just eats the green. Eat the green, brother." You see, the dog just eat the green. So he said, "Okay," and he gave him a cow's body. And now he's just being milked all day. You see, didn't like that. So finally gave him a human body, and he said, "This is well done." God stood up and said, "This is well done. The human body is perfect. Now we can enjoy to the fullest extent everything here in the realm of name and form." So that's where I was going with that, in that direction. You see, this Manushatvam, you need a human birth, then you need a good teacher, and then you need the desire to be free. And Holy Mother, Sri Ramakrishna's divine consort, and my teacher said, let's add a fourth into that in the sage. You need a mind that's on your side. Mm-hmm. Because you can have a human teacher, good teacher, a human birth, and a desire to be free, but you can fail in the end. She's seen it happen, she says, lots of time with aspirants. So what you need is a mind that's on your side and will take you to the goal. So those are really the four boons that you get. Human birth, good teacher, a mind that will take you to the goal, and of course, the desire to be free. Mumukshutvam. Rare, the desire to be free. It's not political freedom we're talking about here. That'll never happen. You might have noticed. And it's not the freedom of a vacation or the freedom to goof off, be lazy. That's just tamas. See. But the freedom that arises in the breast that is aspiring for truth, wants to be free of name and form and time and space based on karma. And then be free to come back and help others. Say, call it a bodhisattva, call it a jivan mukta. In the different traditions, they have words for them. Sees reality dwelling equally everywhere. Sarvatra samavatistam. Now there's prakriti karma kriyamanani. That sees that nature performs all action while the soul remains actionless. These little tiny sentences, stuffed with a few words, are your Vedantic koans. Each one will transmit to you a little bit different aspect of the same reality. You can come at it from different windows into a house. You can look in. This one is very profound in that way. It's actually a teaching from Sri Krishna, as I said. Know, Arjuna, that nature performs all action, that the soul is actionless. And if you can know that, then you'll develop your witness consciousness and you'll quit thinking that you're the doer. And you'll know that nature is producing all of this. And you'll stand off and become yourself again. I can now detach from nature. I can detach from the five elements. I can detach from the subtle elements. I can detach from the tanmatras. And I may detach and lift off of the gross physical station and become a purveyor of other worlds, an explorer of the inner kingdoms within me. And see Brahman everywhere too. Isn't that? You can see how these three triputis are very powerful when you put them together. So Shiva sees reality everywhere, sees reality dwelling equally in everything, and knows that nature performs all action, that the soul remains stable, static, immovable, indivisible. It's all pervasive, so it doesn't have to move. The minute you think I'll go visit my soul now, see, the soul was already there before you even had the thought. It was there before you were born. In the Mundaka Upanishad it says, anterior to both life and mind is this Atman. Anterior means before life and mind. So before the mind started to think and the world started to pour out of it, was this Atman. All pervasive, eternal. Didn't we say that? See? And the third eye knows this. See? The shadow may know. The third eye knows better. Now, let's look at this last quote for the top half of the chart. The eyes are in the center of the forehead, but their gaze is always fixed on the three lower centers where eating, drinking, and sex life are enjoyed. Sounds like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa got into the mix and told us about these three lower centers. Because he said, when I came to earth and took on a human body, I only came down this far, to the heart. That's the drawing room of God where I can meet with the devotees and speak Dharma and talk truth. But I couldn't go any lower, eating, drinking, and sex life. See? That's where everyone is centered, and they're trying to move up, if they're trying to move at all. They're trying to move inward to this heart center, because once the heart center is open, then devotion, compassion, love, service, sacrifice, yagya, all of those things exist there. In fact, I can remember a quote by Sri Ramakrishna. He said, when this center opens in meditation, then the man says, oh, what is this? What is this? That's all he said about it. Oh, what is this? What is this? He sees a great light. He hears the sound. The yogis often talk about hearing the sound in the navel, but its center is there in the heart. You begin to hear it as you transcend heaven and earth. That is, when you get beyond the level of the asuras, let's say, and the demigods and so forth, and you get on toward the level, inner level of the devas, the shining ones they're called, inside of you, then you hear this Om pervading everything. I heard it when I was in the crib, my first time. And then in my teen years I heard it. And I started meditating on it. And I knew that that was eventually the Om, you see. In the beginning was the word. But it was with God first, and then it was God. And I came to understand the triputi of that. In the beginning means origins. In the beginning was the word. God has no origin, so it needs a station to start things running. And guess who is there? See, Divine Mother of the Universe. That's where you'll meet her. She's the holder of the pool of Om, the potential of everything. There it is, unmanifested Prakriti. I still have to pull out the tip of the iceberg chart and show you that. So, beautiful quote by Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. The eye is really here in the forehead. Why do they look down all the time? Why aren't they looking inward, further, towards the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus, they call it, where meditation happens, where great insights, where great realizations happen, where nirvikalpa samadhi can even come upon you, or you can come upon it. Now, here's the references to the eye of wisdom that I found. In Christianity, I already mentioned, if thy eye be single, thou shalt know the truth. In Hinduism, Krishna says, they who perceive with the eye of wisdom, they truly see. Devoting themselves to wisdom, they are neither born at the time of creation, nor are they disturbed at the time of dissolution. But the deluded do not see me as I depart, stay, and enjoy. Only they truly see who possess the inner eye of wisdom. So, that's all beautiful, those three sentences, but my favorite part is they're not disturbed, they're not born at the time of creation, nor are they disturbed at the time of death. That's very profound. Isn't it here? You see everything is imperishable, and you also see that all action takes place in nature, not in you. Well, death and birth are actions taking place. So those aren't taking place in you. Put it together, you see, and witness your own death, and witness your own birth. Then you'll become like, say, Dalai Lama, who's supposed to have 13 or 14 conscious births, and can look back, can look back and see everything in Shiva's trident, gross, subtle, and causal, or the kingdoms of heaven within you. So remember his past births, his past parents, has connected all the dots, all the way back inside, you see. And there's a person who is used to that sound, hala hala. You can certainly point out Dalai Lama, Mahatma Gandhi, people like that as beings who suffered very heavily so, but they did not get detoured. Back to the point here, they are not disturbed at the time of birth, nor are they're not born at the time of creation, nor are they disturbed at the time of death, isn't it? So those are the great examples. I have a story sometimes I tell about teaching in prison. I take these charts and teach Vedanta in the prisons. One lady's prison, you see, one of my students came up and said, I have this cellmate who does horrible things to me 24 hours, and I can't get away from her. What do I do? And she described some of the things that were done to her by this person. I won't gross you out with them. So I said, well, then what you have to do is meditate on Mahatma Gandhi and all the suffering he went through, and meditate on Dalai Lama when Tibet was pillaged and destroyed and annexed by the Red Chinese. Meditate on beings who had so much more to suffer than you did. And so I came back 2 months later, and she said, well, what happened with your situation? She said, well, they moved her to another cell. So some solution will come from somewhere. You just have to change your mind and be open to it. And remember, having that cellmate was a great teaching for her. That's the poison. See, hala hala, right? And it was her dose of hala hala she had to forbear. So she can look back at herself. How did I react when I had to swallow that poison? And next time I can do better when I'm challenged. So that's always the nature of the suffering of relativity. It broadens us. And we look back later and say, oh, I could have done better. I could have served more. I missed my opportunity, and so forth. Those are mantras we don't want to have anything to do with. What we want to do is broaden and expand to where things that were a bee sting become a mosquito bite, and then finally a fly buzzing around, and finally they're gone completely. They don't bother you. You're imperturbable. Another teaching in the Gita close to this one is that one who does not afflict the world and whom the world cannot afflict, that one is the true yogi. So he does not commit any violence against anything in the world, nor can the world in all its violence afflict him. That's a yogi. So you don't attain yogihood by not developing forbearance. Forbearance in the midst of troubles. So in pleasure and pain, in fame and in slander, there are all sorts of slokas in the Gita that direct you along that path. So a little bit of extra about the Hindu third eye here. In Kundalini Yoga, they say, as Kundalini traverses the sixth center or lotus called the Agya Chakra, currents of refined prana rise high. Visions, light, and external sounds are experienced, and the mind gets so absorbed that it loses normal consciousness. So that is the Agya Chakra here. Buddhism says, and Lord Buddha, Shakyamuni, said, I have the true Dharma hidden in my wisdom eye. True Dharma, all the teachings are there. In Taoism, the eyes are the windows of the soul. Between the two windows is the main door to divinity. Enter there to discover your inner divine nature, said Lao Tzu. So, Taoism. How about Gnosticism? The true gate is also the door to one's divine nature. It is the front door to heaven. It is located neither left nor right, up nor down. It is right in the center, and thus is called the door to divinity, or the white sun. In fact, there's even one I didn't put here that just occurred to me. The Rosicrucians and so forth say it's the white dove ascending. So when this eye opens, you actually see a cylinder of light, and it begins to expand. The clouds roll back, and you actually see subtle forms back in it, like islands in a blue sky. Sometimes they call it the blue pearl in some traditions. So now I'm thinking of actually 8, 9, maybe there's an 8th, 9th, and 10th reference to third eye in Shaivism and in other traditions, you see, Rosicrucians. Confucianism says, 3 persons are walking together. Who is the master? They all have 2 eyes, but the divine third eye is the master of all of them. So you have 6 eyes there, but really there's only 1 eye. It's the master there in that little walk they take. So a little bit of information here of a deeper nature around the Jnana Chakshu, or third eye, coming from this part of the Shiva chart that we're looking at, right there, and all filled with the sun of non-dual wisdom. Often they sing beautiful songs about that too. And just because it's so high and cerebral doesn't mean that there can't be devotion to it. It's not like devotion ends and wisdom begins, but actually devotion increases when you sing something like Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Jana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vandeham Shri Guru Sahalagana Raguna Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha. Praises, O Lord, eternal praises, never-ending praises be unto Thee, who takest the devotees from earth to the highest realm of existence, be from the lower 3 centers to this third eye, to this Sahasrara. You have opened my inner eye of wisdom, and given me insight and cleared my perceptions of doubts and imperfections. Therefore to Thee, O Beloved, I offer all that I am. That's the tone and tenor of the singer and composer of this wisdom song, this devotional wisdom song. So you can even put this non-duality in terms of very deep devotion. Now let's look at this Shiva chart to this, now that we've seen the third eye, let's take a little glimpse at and that also actually works in a little bit of the Kundalini Shakti aspect of both this chart and this chart. That is, the third eye is the 6th chakra, so it has to do specifically with Kundalini Shakti. Now, as far as mind and its desires, it might be good to take up the topic of desire in the remaining time in the first half. I gave it a lot of thought, actually, and came up after studying some different scriptures and so forth with basically what I thought was a compilation of about 9 different ways of dealing with desire, because it's a very knotty problem in religion. Almost all religions put the blame on desire for things, Like money's no problem. Desire for money, that's another thing altogether. Desire and attachment breed, and then, of course, a person is robbed of their freedom by money and by wealth and fame and so forth. Name, fame, and gain games, Ramakrishna used to call it. They're trying to get things, see, and covet them when these things are empty and you can't take them with you after death. So some people, the seers, sit back and say, why are you seeking those things like that? Why don't you just move amongst the objects of the senses, enjoy them here and there, and so forth, and never attach to them. Just be free in the realm of the senses. So if you're going to deal with base desire, then you're going to have to look at these three: enjoying desire, satisfying desire, and satiating desire. Those three won't work. Those are pouring gas on fire to put it out. One cannot truly enjoy what does not exist and what gets taken away from others in the process. So that's the problem with enjoying desires, that you can enjoy, but it never satiates you. You never get fulfilled. And then it also takes away from others. That's why sometimes you say, why are you fasting? Oh, I'm fasting to prove that I can live without food for so many days. You ask someone else of a higher caliber of understanding, why are you fasting? Because I don't want to take food away from others. I want them to have the food. So there's fasting not being the most coveted of all austerities amongst the seers. Nonetheless, there are different reasons for doing it that are base and more refined, as the case may be. So that's one motive of these nine that will not work as far as desire, will not cool the desire or satiate it. Satisfying desire, Lord Vashishta says, satisfaction of desires cannot be had through the worlds of name and form unless one has taken refuge in the Dharma. So all of a sudden we get a clue at this level of trying to satisfy his desires, that if we were to take refuge in the Dharma and the teachings, that all of a sudden that spool of our mind, the mind of Mount Mandara, you might say, that has these coils around it called desire and attachment, will start winding off the way they wound on. And the Dharma has that redeeming feature to it. You, as I was saying in satsang this morning and last week at class, if you just take the mind and put it in the teachings, as if your mind were a towel and the teachings were a lake, and just saturate the mind with the teachings, and all of a sudden your problems start going away and you become attracted to the Dharma, and the Dharma washes away all impurities. And with those impurities, of course, desire is one of the problems. One of the three unwholesome roots in Buddhism, for instance. Now, satiating desire, my teacher, Swami Sheshananda, said, satiation never comes. The infinite cannot be realized through the finite. It's a good mantra, a good Vedantic koan. The infinite cannot be realized through the finite. People think, I can get to God through the world. No, you get to God by renouncing the world. Who has ever gotten to God through the world? The experience of the world puts you through misery and suffering. You could say in that way, they maybe prepare me for getting to God. But the actual experience of God realization, that comes through grace. Everyone says that. It doesn't come through suffering. You're going to want to transcend suffering at some point. Bliss, the bliss that's unalloyed and uninterrupted, that's a whole different kind of happiness and joy. It's beyond happiness, it's beyond joy, it's beyond contentment, it's even beyond peace of mind, which is very high. It's this bliss that is unalloyed, that is no mixtures in it, and it's uninterrupted. It doesn't get interrupted by sattva, rajas, and tamas, the gunas of the mind. It doesn't get interrupted by lust, anger, greed, envy, jealousy, pride of caste, pride of lineage, shame, delusion, the six fetters, the six passions and the eight fetters, in other words. It's uninterrupted. So the infinite cannot be realized through the finite, so you turn away from the finite, you put your attention on the infinite. And all of a sudden, just like that, you see, you have satiated, you have found the problem the solution for the problem of trying to satiate desire. So those are inferior modes. The superior modes are very interesting. You can fulfill desire only through the Dharma, as was suggested by Lord Vashishta, one of the ancient seers and one of the 10 mind-born sons of Lord Brahma, the projector god. You see, we call him the creator, they're sometimes called. So only through Dharma can you fulfill desires. So you take refuge in the Dharma, like getting a mantra, finding a teacher, doing your spiritual practices, and all of a sudden your desires get fulfilled in the Dharma. Resisting desire through self-effort, avoiding repression. And that's a tough way. In fact, these next 1, 2 are very difficult, usually done only by very strong souls or by monks. One is called resisting desire, or another is called destroying desire at the root via austerity. Those are very difficult to do. Not many people go that path. But there are hundreds and thousands of monks in the world too, many of them are taking that path. But some of these monks are more devotionally oriented, some of them are meditation oriented, some of them are Jnana Yoga oriented, third eye type of beings. And so some of them can manage the tearing of desire out by the roots and the replacing of the emptiness that causes, the scar that causes, by the presence of God, or the presence of some redeeming thing, as we were just saying. So those two, resisting desire while avoiding repression and destroying desire, are very difficult, but they are effective if you can manage them. The other 3 are surrendering desire, and that everyone likes, and probably the one most beings like would be sublimating desire. That is, surrendering desire being the various acts of yagya, and that's where I won't go into it now, but I brought that chart on sacrifice or yagya that I can show you. And sublimating desire by removing poison from passion. Now here we get back to hala hala, right? Sublimating desire, that's kind of the whole point of that transmuting of poison of relativity to the nectar, amrit they call it, of absolute reality. That is, sublimating desire means that you're going to take it up the spine, take the energy up the spine. It's sort of like, if you were to explain it metaphorically, there's a great snake there, Kundalini, and it's rising out of its coils. In fact, if you go to teachers of Kundalini Yoga, the first question they'll ask you is, have you uncoiled the serpent yet? See? It's like going to a Zen Buddhist monastery. The first thing they'll ask you will be something about, have you died on your pillow, you see, or something. But in Kundalini circles, they'll ask you, have you uncoiled your serpent yet? So they want to know how far that great serpent of Kundalini power has risen in you. Is it penetrating through the realm of the ancestors, right there at the navel? Is it going to make it to the realm of the devotees? See, the kingdom of heaven within you, deeper and deeper. Where is it? So that sublimating power is what you're going to want to get a hold of in Kundalini Yoga. That is, your food has to be blessed. That would be the first thing. You say a mantra over your food to remove the 4 purities in it. Then you begin to say mantra and do practice, and that prana that's in food turns into mukhya prana. That's healthy energy. Now that's where most people stop. Oh, I got good health. Now I can have longevity. That's it. I just wanted a good long life. End of their sadhana, you see. Now I'm a healthy animal, in other words. But I haven't realized my divine nature yet, you see. But mukhya prana, they say, can be transmuted further, sublimated, into ojas. I call it spiritual orange juice, you see. Ojas is a Sanskrit word, and it really means a power from food that has been sublimated through practice, that comes and develops in you as the power of wisdom, as the power of knowledge. It emanates off of you like an aura. That's where the idea of an aura comes from. And particularly if it's worked on in a deeper way, the sublimation process then culminates in what's called tejas. That's the light of wisdom. That's where you get these masters who, yes, it happens. They can actually touch you with their hand or look at you with their gaze. See, that's called chakshu diksha. This is called hasta diksha. It happened to Arjuna. Krishna put his hand on Arjuna, and Arjuna had this powerful vision inside and said, take that away. It's too much for me. You see, that's a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Vishvarupa Darshanam is called. So there's such a great power stored up in this sublimation process that through the touch, through the eye, through a word, through a meditation, through a thought, they can transfer power to you. And this is going to be power that's been freed of its poison. They say there's a poison at every one of those centers. This poison here is called disorientation. Amrit is there, that is higher vision, third eye vision, but the tendency to get disoriented and fall from that perch, get lost, is also there. So there's a nectar and a poison. It's two petals after all, you see. One is outward going, one's inward going. So souls are coming out of the third eye petal into embodied existence. Hopefully they know what they're doing. And then they're giving up the form and going back inward into the other petal, into the ocean of light, the ocean of sound. And immersing themselves and destroying their form. That is, giving up their form, dissolving their form in bliss. Unalloyed, uninterrupted bliss, by the way. Ananda, they call it. It's a word for it. It's horripilation of the flesh type of ananda. It's hair standing on the end kind of. It's better than cheek on skin, brother. Eyes rolled up in the head kind of ananda, you see. Kundalini rising. Forget Sagittarius rising and all that. Try Kundalini rising. Go beyond astrology and get to your Atmic reality that's inside of you. Well, then there's a little bit more about sublimating desire, because I think that's really apropos for the Westerners and for yogic aspirants of this day and age, contemporary times. But then there's also the transcending the desire using non-receptivity to it. That's called asamvedana. All right, we could just call it asam. Asamvedana means I have developed this ability just to sidestep my desires, thank you, when they're headed my direction. It'd be like a train coming at you, destined to hit you, but you put your ear to the tracks about a minute before it got there. Oh, I see, danger's coming. I think I'll just step off the tracks, and whoosh, the thing goes by. So if you have a great karma coming from your desires, or great desires coming that are going to turn into actions that turn into karma, you can sidestep them. And this is a great art, asamvedana. It's also a teaching of Lord Vashishta, whose quote we read on the third eye chart. So these are the 9 ways in which I was able to gather from, and I put them into 2 modes, inferior and superior. Now, this teaching, if we have time for it before the break, is the way it would be concepted if you were going to talk about it like Buddha did, say, the wheel of birth and death. That's called Kala Chakra, by the way, the wheel of birth and death. That is, you're on this wheel of birth and death, and you never know there's such a thing as many lifetimes. You're in a one lifetime scenario in the box. So when you're born, you don't know where you came from and where you're going. And when you die, you don't know where you're going. There's no consciousness attached. There's no consciousness separate from matter. See, that's the real problem, isn't it? Scientist or any kind of biologist or scientist walks up to you and says, has a monkey there and says, this is our ancestor. This is our ancestor. You were once a monkey. Well, I may have associated with the monkey form, but I was never a form. I was always the witness of the forms I took. I don't know about you, Mr. Scientist or Mr. Doctor, but consciousness is separate from matter, separate from form, separate from name, separate from cause and effect, transcendent of everything. Consciousness with a capital C is what the seers have realized. So you're not going to be able to convince me that in order to see my ancestors, I have to go to a zoo. It's not going to work on me. So, in other words, you're going to have to prove to yourself that you're not the form, and that all of your past lifetimes have been dreams, and all of your coming lifetimes are also dreams. If you're a good dreamer, more power to you. I said this morning at satsang that Swami Vivekananda was asked, should a man be reborn? Now that we found out that rebirth is a relative law here, and karma causes it, and desire causes karma. Now that we found this out, Swami, what should we do? Should we be reborn? He said, I certainly hope you will not be reborn. Not until you can do so in full consciousness. Inferring the fact that he was born in full consciousness. He was a Nityasiddha, eternally perfect soul. And number two, that we should learn that art of conscious rebirth. And in order to have a conscious rebirth, we need to die consciously. We need to have our first conscious death. And in order to know that, in order to have your first conscious death, you're going to have to know that death is an illusion. That death happens in nature. But did you read the teaching, you see? Did you pay attention to the teaching? Nature performs all action, the soul doesn't. Birth is an act. Death is an act. So I don't partake of those, thank you. My soul watches while my mind-ego complex takes a dream. See? But my soul is always witness to that dream. And memory of that dream is stored back in my subtle mind, in my causal memory. See? And I need to recover it and bring it forward to know my rebirths. Krishna was saying Arjuna on the battlefield. Arjuna said, how do you know all this that you're telling me? Krishna said, I learned it from Vishvasvat. And Arjuna said, but he lived centuries ago. How'd you learn it from him? And Krishna said, I've had many births, Arjuna. I know all mine. You don't know any of yours yet. You haven't recovered them yet out of your causal memory, see where they're stored. So you need to concentrate, and guess what? If you open the third eye, Jnana Chakshu, there you will see the whole thing. Plus a lot of other things that are going to be of great benefit and great interest to you. So when that eye becomes single, you shall know the truth. So this, and we have 10 minutes left to explain this, it's not that hard really. It might look a little bit complex, but basically here is samsara or maya. You see, it basically starts with cycles of maya. The movement, spontaneously alternating counteractive cycles. One's going one direction, one's going the other. No wonder people can't get off of it. The one that's spinning this way is called birth in ignorance, growth in selfishness, life lived in delusion, and death in doubt and fear. I couldn't know any better way to put it. No matter what happy little gray studies of life people live, they still have to deal with these things if they're worldly, if they haven't awakened to higher spiritual life, even just to religion, what to speak of spirituality. That wheel is spinning all the time. This wheel is called, you get on this wheel and it's called birth in heaven, and have to return to earth, and the study of conventional religion, observance of ethics, mundane habitual life, attachment to pleasure, and then birth back on heaven and earth with your ancestors, swapping back and forth with your ancestors. You know how many nations worship their ancestors? Why do you think they do that? I saw the name of a book today at Oxford University on Hinduism was called Feeding the Dead. It's a new book out, Feeding the Dead. So that's basically what the Shinto religion does, and what the Hindu religion does, at fundamentalist level, is that they give yagyas and sacrifices to their ancestors all the time. You do it all the time, and you eat the food that's left over from that, and you offer it to your ancestors. We're talking about millions of people who do this, you see. So where do you think they're going after death? If not to their ancestors. So this is a great wheel. It's called samsara pragbara in the oldest times. Then it was called samsara in Buddhist times, and it's called maya in Vedic times. They know about these wheels. That's why I fashioned them as circles. So if you have millions and millions of souls going one way in selfishness, and dying in doubt and fear, then you have other souls practicing conventional religion and observance of ethics just for pleasure and power to lord over others, then what do you think Maya consists of? You can give it a new definition on top of Swamiji's. Name, form, time, space, and causality are all going on in those two wheels. And that's all happening in nature. The acts are all happening in nature. Manifested and unmanifested nature, aren't they? As you leave form, you go to unmanifested state, you carry in your mind the effects of these desires that are unsatisfied, and it kicks you back. And your first mantra you hear is wah, 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 as you hang upside down, as the midwife cuts your umbilical cord and you don't know what's happening. So, you should be saying, who am I, who am I? But your mantras become, why me, why me? If you're asking, who am I, you're getting to the core of the thing. You say, oh, I am the undying, birthless self. You see, Shankara sings it nicely. Aham nirvikalpo. I am nirvikalpa. I am beyond birth and death. Nirakara rupo. I am beyond cause, kara. Nira, I have destroyed cause. I am the very form of causelessness. Vibhutvacha sarvatra karmendriyanam. Beyond the senses. Chidananda rupaha shivoham shivoham. The sixth verse of the Nirvana Shatkam, the 6 verses on Nirvana, sung by thousands and thousands of monks, see? And by a few poor little souls like myself who learned them from monks. So basically, he's saying, I am nirvikalpa. I am transcendent of all kalpas. Kalpas means imaginings in time. I have gone beyond the mind's power to form and dissolve things. Because basically I realize that all takes place in nature, and I am not nature. See? I am the sentient, all-pervasive soul called consciousness, timeless, deathless awareness, Atman, Buddha nature, however you want to call it. Here on this side you see Bur, Bhuva, Swaha. Tat Savitur Varenyan Bhargo Devasya Dimohi Diyoyona Prachodayat. See? The great Gayatri mantra, again chanted by millions and millions of people daily, multiple times. So Burloka is these are the 7 realms, and these 3 are all the realms of return. See? They go by the moonlit path, Krishna says in the Gita. They go to their ancestors and then they come back. It's the moonlit path, it's the dark path, and they go by the sunlit path, see? Never to return again. So basically this is putting it in terms of worlds or lokas inside. Well, I swear I will get to that chart on the tip of the iceberg after the break. We'll see that. So if you make it out of the tendency to transmigrate and trade places with your ancestors, this is why Buddha sat so many days under the bo tree, to kind of penetrate through that Kala chakra and get off the wheel of time. So one of his last teachings was, get out of the river and sit on the banks, and you'll see everything go by, and you'll see the same thing go by eventually if you watch long enough, and you'll know it's all cyclic. If you know it's all cyclic, you'll want to get off the merry-go-round. Child gets sick if he stays on too long, see, loses his lunch. So basically, you're going to want to get off cycles when you find out that you're bound onto cycles. I want to be free. Freedom. So that line of demarcation there between the realms of heaven, earth, lower heaven and higher heaven, Bur, Bhuva, and Swarloka, gets penetrated, and you find these two wheels. And we will start there after our break, because there's not enough time. But this is a good place to start, because it will lead us into the teaching of manifested and unmanifested Prakriti. So please, here the live streaming audience can view these 2 or 3 charts we taught on the camera today as we take our break with a little refreshment and come back in 15 minutes. Thank you for your kind attentions. Welcome back to our second half of our Shakta Advaita Vada class. In the second series, we've been on and on about this topic for some 7-8 classes now, and we'll have another one next week, and I think one more after that possibly. So we will cap it off, and we will hopefully go through this entire chart on Divine Mother Reality in all her aspects. As many as we could fit on an 8x11, that they could be expanded for a visual aid to sort of give us symbolic representation of all that's within the kingdoms of heaven within, that are within her, and all of that being inside of us, see, as Atman. So it's a very vast and intricately connected process and principle that we're studying here, and we were studying it in terms of one of the impediments to such universality called desire. Now, one of the teachings of Divine Mother herself in the recent age, that is Sri Sharda Devi, is that there are desires that are good for your spiritual life, and then there's desires that aren't good for your spiritual life. The ones that are good for your spiritual life, she says, are those that increase detachment. And so those are the ones that you look towards, say, the desire to do sadhana, or the desire to serve human beings and help remove their miseries and sufferings and so forth. Those are very, very good desires. The desire to increase your devotion to God. Sometimes people would come up to one of the direct apostles or disciples of Sri Ramakrishna and say, well, you say that we need to get over all desire, but what about my desire to be devoted to God more and more? Oh, that's not a desire in the ordinary sense. So he used to say, there are certain kinds of greens that you eat which are bad for your digestion, and there are certain kind of greens that you can eat that are good for your digestion. If you figure out the right one through your discrimination, then of course you don't have to give up eating greens, all greens. And so, by the way, the Hindus aren't really into salads, so that's a teaching that might not want to be applicable here in the West, where we're organic and also so we're all into salads and so forth. But this indicates this idea of desires that are positive that you can pursue. And so it's not what they call a conventional teaching anymore. It has aspects of it that are more innovative. And as we were looking into that, we found that there were 3 ways of inferior modes of trying to purify or transcend your desires, and then we find that there were these 6 superior modes, and we looked at them as applying to different temperaments. Then we took it on in the case of cycles or wheels, this great wheel of worldliness, samsara that's going, the wheel of conventional religion that's going the opposite way. We looked at that and how difficult that is to penetrate through. So people end up going from earth to lower heaven to higher heaven and back again all the time, and never piercing through the realm of the ancestors and the elementals and so forth. But then we saw that there are these, of the 7 worlds, 7 realms, there are 4 that are headed more towards formless transcendence, that are much deeper and much more, for instance, like Tapar Loka and so forth is the realm of beings who have mastered intense sadhana, intense austerity. So they're very, very strong souls that, if they ever took on a body, would be illumined souls here on earth, without a doubt. And of course they would be coming here as a tapas. It would be their sacrifice and an austerity to even take a body, because they're enjoying such felicitude in these higher realms of consciousness which they inhabit. So when we look at wheels, then we see the worlds of rebirth and then the worlds of no rebirth. And so here's a worldly wheel inside of a wheel that's conventional religion. These 2 wheels are dharmic wheel, you've heard about that too, and then the wheel of sadhana. And those get more to the point of absolute freedom. That is very difficult to be getting any kind of freedom other than going to heaven. That's why Vedantists don't care for heaven. My teacher used to say, I don't care for a post-mortem emancipation. And Vedantists don't care for heaven. It's just another realm of name and form. And we've learned about the desirability, if you want to use the word in this context, of formless reality, and how a soul should be able to enter into that like they do into deep sleep naturally, and come out of it and back and forth between form and formlessness. Sri Aurobindo called it ascending the amber stairs of birth and death, coming back up and down the amber stairs of birth and death, he called it. So there are souls that are very much in the know, we say in Hawaii, akamai, about that process, conscious birth, conscious death, many conscious lifetimes, and they don't give up on this. Vivekananda himself said, I might find, this is a paraphrase, but almost an exact quote, I may find it very beautiful to get out of my body. I'll feel very free. But I will never stop taking on a body. I'll take on 1,000 births if I can just help one person to get free. So they have this very deep commitment. Why not? Because they are free. And when they come to earth in a body, they're going to suffer like the rest of us, as you know by a lot of the stories of the avatars and incarnations that suffered at the hands of worldly people and power-mad people, people who are into domination and passions and fetters and so forth. They suffered at the hands, but yet they still come back and always offer the Dharma. So this is the next wheel we're talking about here, Dharmic life. You enter into it through yearning. They used to ask Sri Ramakrishna, what is the way in this age, sir? They would go to him. These are the Hindu people of 1800s in Calcutta. They would go to the Kali temple and ask him, what is the way, sir? What is the way? How can, they'd say, you must realize God. And they say, how to realize God? You must develop a little yearning for God. Cry one tear for God. You cry hundreds of tears, jugs of tears for the world and family and money and things that are ephemeral. Won't you just try and cry one sincere tear for realization of God? And that's the beginning of yearning. So that's why I put the beginning of the Dharmic wheel really is about yearning. And it begins to yearn for vows and precepts. Down here it was morals and ethics, you see, and they took you so far, but only so far. But up here you begin to find out that you need to commit yourself via vows, vrata, and precepts. They're different than commandments. I've often used the example of thou shalt not kill is a commandment, but thou cannot kill is a dharmic teaching. It is, you cannot kill because nothing was ever born. So you can see the very wide chasm, as it were, between moral and ethical life and dharmic life. You're taking on truths that might not make any sense to people of the world. It would stun them. And in fact, it probably stunned you when you first heard it. You can't kill anyone. It's not that thou shalt not kill, it's thou cannot kill. The soul is never born, so it cannot die. And all of a sudden you're shifting away from the ego-mind-body mechanism that you thought was real, and you're shifting to the eternal soul. And in one big jump, you've made the grade to spiritual life from religious life. And that's conventionally religious life. Vivekananda said, we don't want to do away with religion as Vedantists. We want religion with a small r to be returned to uppercase R religion, real religion, which would have everything to do with helping people, serving people as God, serving God in human beings, he would say, and living a divine and conscious life on earth, at least a dharmic life. So from yearning you get to vows and precepts, and that's basically, you get a teacher and you say, what do I do? And how can I commit myself deeper? You don't know how often I hear when people want to take initiation into our order or into Vedantic life per se. How often I hear that, what do I have to do? How deep do I have to commit? And I want you to know that I need to know this before I take the commitment. It's kind of a lukewarm kind of approach they're taking. See, I want you to know that I really can't commit myself completely to this because I have other time constraints and so forth and so on. So in this day and age, you make the concession. whereas they didn't in the ancient times in India. They didn't make concession. If you didn't have the 6 treasures and the 4 jewels completely under your control, then you couldn't even take initiation into the path. You had to have things like viveka, vairagya, mumukshutvam, shraddha, faith. You needed to already have these things well developed in you before you came to a teacher and said, will you accept me? But it's not the case in the Kali Yuga. We call it Kali Yuga. There's a lot of concessions that have to be made for people so that they can struggle their way out of wheels like this that have become age-old. And they're very unlikely to get off of them without some sort of special concession or grace. So Dharmic life is very beautiful in that way. And you find people who say, I vow, I will take a vow of sannyas, I will take a vow of celibacy, I will take a vow of reading the Gita cover to cover. See, I will take a vow of committing to the path and the teacher until I get free. Those kinds of vows and precepts are of the Dharma. That's why the Dharma is so precious. Milarepa says, when I think of the Dharma, I can't help but want to share it with everyone. One of his songs, he sang. When I think of the Dharma and how precious it is, I can't help but share it with everyone. So he wants to go out and spread this broadcast. When our founder, Lex Hickson, who founded this SRV organization of ours with a few other of us, he was sort of the spark plug of it all in the early times, back in the 80s, 90s, when he was on passing from the body, and he was asked, what do you think about? And he said, I think about spreading the Dharma, teachings to others. How to do that in my next lifetime. I want to come back and take a whole new tact. Sounds like Swami Vivekananda, so we might come back as a Muslim, or you never know what Vivekananda would do. You see, come back and just appear in a different country with a different agenda, just because he knows all of this is a continuum, you see. And consciousness infills it all, so he's going to appear to you in a certain form or with a certain agenda to wake you up, or to wake up as many people as possible inside of the time he has in the body, which last lifetime was 39 years. I think I'll take a body for 39 years and see what I can do. You see, Shankara, 32 years when he was here in around 700 AD. So anyway, some inspiring information about vows and precepts, how important that is to a person. You must have an ideal, is the way Vivekananda would put it, and you must commit yourself fully to the ideal if you want to make progress in spiritual life. So there it is, Dharmic life. I would say the soul has 3 choices that are good, just like you would have higher choices in the realm of desire. The 1 is to live a Dharmic life, the 2 is to live a divine life, and 3 is to don't live a life at all. Transcend all life. All worlds, both here and now, there do I renounce. All heavens, all earths, all hopes, and all fears, thus cut thy bonds. That's how Vivekananda put it. So he was going to go beyond all worlds, all embodiment, all the realms of name and form, time and space, because that's the true nature of human being is to be formless, all-pervasive, infinite, eternal. That's its true nature. So that's called Vidya-mukti. You give up all bodies and you merge like a hailstone into the ocean. But then there's these other 2 choices, you see, divine life and dharmic life. So here you're at dharmic life. You take the vows and precepts and you begin to hear the teachings and you dip your mind over and over and over again in them, and you find your desires being sublimated naturally as you do that. It's like, don't water the weeds, water the flowers. That's what Vedanta says. It's called pratipaksha bhavanam. Don't water the weeds, water the flowers. So you just take away your energy, your energy, your attention, your brooding, your worries away from all your imperfections, and you just place it on your divine nature, on God, on Brahman, on your teachers, on the seers, on the scriptures. There are plenty of positive things to place your attention on. And just by the act of doing that, you take energy away from all of these negativities, and it's the divine way of progressing. See? Resist not evil was the teaching. If you get into there and you just invest in evil, then what do you think is going to happen? they read the first few pages of the Bible once, King James Bible, to Sri Ramakrishna, and he said, stop, enough. They're speaking too much about sin. A man should never hear about sin. A man should hear about his divine nature. So sin is some sort of error that you've fallen into, as it were, a transgression. And it's not real, like darkness in a cave is not real. You bring a torch in and it's gone in an instant, even though it might have been sitting there for 1,000 years, undiscovered. And so this is the tact you take in Vedanta, is immediately you put your divine attention on divine things and watch the weeds just wilt in a matter of days, months, or if it's a particularly persnickety weed, then a year or a lifetime, but you get rid of it. And that's going to happen by vows and precepts and so forth. So enter into dharmic life. Those choices, dharmic, divine, and transcendent. But what you don't want is Mayic life, or life of suffering, a life of ignorance, life on the wheel of samsara over and over again. Those things you want to get beyond. See? Now, what we're talking about here then is, here we were talking about Maya's twin wheels. Here we're talking about Maha Maya's twin wheels. It's a wheel of transformation you're on here. That is, this grinding process of this dharmic life going one way and life of practice going the other, turns the rough jewel into a refined diamond. That's the process of the 6 jewels and 4 treasures, as I was saying. Pretty soon then you're cut in the image, and you're polished too, with this kind of opposite wheel going on. Whereas down here you were just gravel turning around in a dump truck, you see, being recycled and poured out and refashioned again. So cycles of dharma and sadhana as compared to cycles of worldliness and conventional religion alone. Or you could say wheel of transmigration as compared to the wheel of transformation. And which would you choose? So as you go around this wheel, you get a desire for freedom, as I mentioned in the first half, mumukshutvam, desire for freedom. And you slip into this attaining path and guru. So the path and the teacher are very important at that point. And you might have attained them even back here when you took the vows and precepts and started into dharmic life. But the way of the world today is quite often that people, myself was a case, 12 years of study before I found my teacher. And very deep study. And from my 20th year to my 30th year, and even beyond, I was studying very deeply myself and very interested and very committed. And I found my teacher. And it gave me that extra boost, you see, and got initiated and so forth. And now I'm almost into my 45th year now of that kind of vow and precept, that kind of commitment and practice. So for many people it happens like that. But eventually you will come upon the path and the guru, as they say, and you'll start the initial practices. Now practice is going to be another side to dharma. Dharmic life, you hear the vows and you hear the teachings and take the vows and precepts, but when you actually start to practice them, that's the real cutting edge of things. When you can sit and meditate, when you can pick up a scripture and study it for an hour or two, as I was doing in my 20s, as I said, very, very interested in it. And you can enter into sadhana, spiritual effort, spiritual self-effort, and you feel like you're making progress in your gaining transformation of all your desires and so forth, then you know that you've come upon the outer circle of Mahamaya. And it will turn into worship and study, meditation, and direct perception of reality. And that will give way to formless transcendence, right on off the wheel into the experience of nirvikalpa samadhi, asamprakyata samadhi, aparinama, non-transformation, non-birth, non-death, ajati vada. You're in the mahatattvas of Mother Loka. You're in the highest principles of all. And desire is a thing of the past, as often they even sing about it. Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Bhajamana Parina Bhava Bhaya Daranam Bhava Kanchalochana Kancha Mukakara Kancha Pada Kanjarana Iti Vadata Tulasi Dasa Shankara Sheshamuni Manaranjanam Iti Vadata Tulasi Dasa Shankara Sheshamuni Manaranjanam Mama Hridaya Kanjani Vasa Kuru Kamari Kaladala Ganjanam Mama Hridaya Kanjani Vasa Kuru Kamari Kaladala Ganjanam Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Vajamana Arana Bhava Bhayadarunam. And on the song rolls. That was just one verse of about 5 or 6 beautiful verses by this great devotee of Ram, Tulsidas, who is not only known for his beautiful bhajans to Ram, but to Divine Mother too. Talk about Shakta Advaita Vada, and also his scripture, his commentaries and his Ramayana and so forth. So basically he's saying here, beholding the great Lord Shiva, Shesha, and all other illumined saints and sages, when they behold you, they are glad of heart and they're extremely pleased. Therefore this poet, Tulsidas, humbly begs and requests, O Ramchandra, kindly come and dwell forever in my heart and destroy all unworthy desires abiding there. Destroy them outright. So your ideal is important, your practice is important, hearing the teachings is important, getting a guru is important, having an ideal is of great importance if you're interested in freedom. That is, returning to the freedom that is always yours, consciously. Not just dreaming about it, talking about it, hoping for it. All hopes and fears are gone now. I've cut them away. I'm not looking for postmortem emancipation in the lower realms. I'm not even looking to get to the higher realms. I'm getting to my practice. You see, I want to hear the teachings, practice them, and realize the truth, and be free. Because I am free all the time. Vivekananda said, I want all beings to be free as the air that you breathe. Have you paid anyone for air lately? I hope it's not gotten that bad yet. You see, in Hawaii at least, we can walk out and, you see, there's no one there to collect a fee. See, so that free. You want to be just that free in your true self, in your true nature. So beautiful songs written again in a devotional vein around this highest teaching of Swadharma. You see, once you get Dharma, Dharmic life, and practice it, and you start practicing, then you're away from Adharma, that is, no righteousness at all, no teachings, no learning. And you've gotten into Dharma, where you get the teachings, and then you get into Swadharma, which is your true destiny. That's what you wanted for yourself before you got embodied. I will find my Swadharma on earth. See? And then I will be free to be reborn or not. Dharmic life, divine life, or transcendence, it's all an open pathway to me. And then I have become Jivan Mukta. See, become a Jivan Mukta, a living, liberated soul, unbound, as Vivekananda said, ever free, never bound. So, a look at 9 ways of dealing with desire in accord with Mount Mandara, the snake Ashesha, who got himself wrapped around, that is the mind with its coils of attachment and desire that are being pulled here and there by gods and demigods in order to get and possess and gain and become renowned and to dominate. Does it sound familiar? It happens even in the realms of heaven, that there are beings who just want to dominate, gain power, gain pleasure, and try and escape suffering. But Krishna says in the Gita, know that which is sweet at first and sour later to be rejected. Know that which is sour at first and which turns sweet later to be accepted. What's sour in the beginning and sweet later is sadhana, this wheel of sadhana. Because your desires go away naturally. It's not like you have to sit down and say, oh, I wish I could get over this desire. How am I going to do that? Shall I pull it out by the roots? No, you just fulfill yourself in the Dharma. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Let's see, the four fruits of life. Dharma, righteousness. Kama, legitimate desires come, get fulfilled. Artha, wealth comes, that's not problematic to me. And finally, moksha, I get free. Sounds like a good plan. I think I'll accept Divine Mother's plan, sign that contract. I did. I signed a contract. Literally, in Swami Sheshananda's ashram. We were doing a Kali Puja one night, Durga Puja actually, 10 days and 10 nights. And one morning he came in and he had a scroll of paper rolled up and a gold pin, and he made us all sign. And this is years after I took my initiation. I always wondered what that was about. It's like I signed my name in gold letters on this parchment on Durga Puja, Navaratri. So it's like, and I did it so willingly and so happily. It was like psychological thing, I think. It says, you are on this path. You are committed to this path. You will get the fruits of Divine Mother, Dharma, Kama, Artha, and Moksha. It's a done deal. Sign. Okay. See? So I'm saying literally, I signed a contract with a holy man. And I don't think I've ever told that to anyone. Oops, I'm live streaming. Now the whole world knows. Good, let them know. I want them to know about this, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here for hours and sharing with you all of this beautiful wisdom that is endless. It's endless. So, speaking about something that's endless, let's look then at this next teaching. I'm going to say that we've pretty much covered this chart. We'll come to the Shiva retreat on Shivaratri in Seattle in February, and we'll cover it more fully. But this chart is really our main chart, Shakta Advaita Vada chart. This has come off of the teaching of the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Lord Shiva, especially the Shiva teaching of Nilkantha, the transmutation of poison into nectar, which I think is very aligned with today's needs, as all of the poisons are coming at us, not only environmentally and mentally and so forth, but the challenges to our intellect and to our spirituality are also grave, and we need to be face them off and attain higher awareness. Again, start watering these flowers in us and give up watering the weeds on all levels. So if we go back to Divine Mother chart here for a second, you can see here this teaching we've been mentioning again and again. Here on this yoni, you see, she's actually kind of replacing the Shiva lingam here, you might say. And she's coming up out of this. But this is, connects to Shiva, Brahma, Vishnu, and Brahma, right into the area of unmanifested Prakriti and then manifested Prakriti. Manifested Prakriti would be air, earth, fire, water, ether, seeing, tasting, hearing, touching, smelling, objects, matter, everything here that you can see, taste, touch, hear, and smell. That's manifested Prakriti. And it is just the tip of the iceberg. But unmanifested Prakriti is everything that lies underneath the ocean, you see. Lies underneath the ocean. There's the tip of the iceberg, here's the bulk. And icebergs in Arctic climates will stay a long time. Some of them have not melted for hundreds and thousands of years, I hear. So basically, this is a very good teaching about the eternity of nature. We talk about the eternal existence of the soul. We talk about, very definitely, the eternal existence of God, or divine reality, however you want to put it. Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father. Those two things are eternal, no doubt. Maybe a little doubt around the soul until you prove it yourself. See? But those are basically what we call eternal. God and the soul, with a capital S. Now you have nature. And then you have Maya, this flummoxing part of in our mind that is causing us to think untoward thoughts and water the weeds instead of the flowers. So those two are called eternal by the seers. We find out that everything is eternal. Sarvosmi, everything is. Probably the shortest mantra you could probably come up with as far as a divine saying. Everything is. So when it isn't, or when it isn't there, it's just that it has gone into hiding. Whether it be your great-grandfather or the dinosaurs or whatever, it's gone back into its formless essence. That's called unmanifested prakriti. That is the essence of form. It's not the formless essence. It's formless, but it's not formless with a capital F. So I hope I'm not confusing the matter here. When things are in the external world, in this part of Shiva's trident, the gross world, that's called manifested prakriti. That's the tip of the iceberg. But everything that seems to be passing, that dies, as they say, that's just not dying at all. It's just going to the bulk of the iceberg that is hidden under the surface of everything. That's the teaching of unmanifested prakriti, so that great beings like Krishna and others can come forward and tell you that this is my eightfold body, 5 elements and senses and mind and so forth. But I have an inward nature that's unmanifested, and that's mind, where everything outward comes from. So that would be the beginning of unmanifested prakriti, back to a place when form actually disappears. It's sort of like waking, dreaming, and deep sleep again. In waking, you're aware of the manifested prakriti, but when you go into dreaming, you become aware of unmanifested prakriti. You still have trees and oceans and land and wings if you fly, and bodies, you see, back in your dream state. So you've gone into an unmanifested state where everything that was a solid concept became a liquid concept. That is, liquidity is there. Flow, not inhibited by gross form. So that's manifested prakriti and unmanifested prakriti. But then Krishna goes on to say, but beyond both of those are my supremely unmanifested form, that is me, and my devotees come to me. So they go beyond form and formlessness, small f, to formlessness with a capital F. That's samadhi, nirvana, satori, Brahman, Allah, Almighty Father, what you want to realize in your deepest meditations. So with the tip of the iceberg teaching, it becomes a little bit more evident when you assign the cosmic principles to it, many of them which are on this chart of Divine Mother, which we've been looking at. So here you see like Paramakasha, the sky of awareness, the sunlight of non-dual reality. Basically, you can even sing about those. They want you to know about them in stotrams that are very lovely. Samasteshu vashtush vanushu tam ekam samastani vashtuni anashprishanti Vyadvatsada shuramaju swarupam Sanicha palabdi swarupoham atmam. Sky of awareness, see, says, there is only one existing in all beings, and all existing in it. It filters down and touches all hearts and minds, yet nothing can touch it. It is like the sky, pure and serene, subtle and impossible to taint. That one am I am that one, there can be none other. So, sky of awareness. It filters down and touches all beings, but nothing can touch it. And it's like the sky, pure and serene, indivisible and impossible to taint. It's like the ether, the sky of awareness. So you can sing about it or you can talk about it. If we talk about it, it ends up being the backdrop upon which all form takes place. And guess what? All formlessness also takes place on top of it, because it is the formlessness with a capital F, and this unmanifested prakriti, or pradhana they call it, is formless matter, all worlds, all things, all objects in potential. So this is a great teaching. Why? One reason is because immediately you get rid of the fear of death, which is that fifth and lowest hell we talked about. You realize that death is an illusion, that everything that takes on a form, mankind's souls, transmigrating souls, and nature and Maya all follow these cycles. You see, we put it in terms of desires here, but you might as well put it in terms of cycles of time, cycles of space. And that's why I also brought the little Russian doll chart, which is really good to describe how worlds are all tucked back in each other from gross to subtle to causal. It's basically a teaching around this trident. That puts it in terms of 3 worlds, but the Russian dolls chart puts it in terms of 5 Russian dolls all tucked back into each other, 5 akashas that go, by the way, with the Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, and Anandamaya Kosha, the 5 sheaths, right? The 5 coverings over the soul, all starting from gross to subtle to causal. See? So when you hear about it put in old Samkhya terms, as far as pradhana, the word pradhana goes, then you start even simplifying it further. You say, well, everything outwardly, exterior, is manifested nature, and when that passes, it appears to be destroyed in terms of forms of nature. It seems to die in terms of human souls. That's not really happening at all. It's just going back into unmanifested nature, and it will come out again. Krishna says it to Arjuna in the Gita very nicely. He says, 2 things you should know. First thing, that the Atman is eternal and it never dies. But if you can't know that yet, Arjuna, you can't be sure of that yet, then you should know that everything that is born dies, and everything that dies gets born again. And then he ends off the statement saying, where's the grief in this? Where's the grief in this? Even if you're in the cycle, you see, you're birthless, deathless. And so you should just start thinking in terms of transcending birth and death as concepts. They came out of you. Time and space came out of you. Lokas came out of you. The 3 worlds are in you. Or, if you want to put it the way we were just singing it, Chidananda Rupaha Shivoham Shivoham. I am Shiva. Shivoham. I am Shiva. He's not pulling any punches or trying to hide the fact of his non-dual realization. I am Shiva. That's why he called himself Shankara, as a name for Shiva. So in that regard then, everything has come out. Everything is, and it's come out of the self in these sort of double movement. See? If it's in a causal state, it's no mind, no matter. No matter, never mind, as my teacher used to quip. If that's in it when it's formless causal state, you don't even have to think about it because thought is gone. That's the point. No mind. But if it comes into subtle and gross states, you see these 2 parts of the trident, then you have to worry about it. Then it's a potential problem. Or then if you want to say it's to be mastered. The A and U of my Om has to be mastered. So you start mastering the waking state, mastering the dream state, by saying, I'm the same in both of them. I'm the witness of both of them. They're both in me. And whatever teaching you have to take, they're two prongs of the same trident, or they're in Samkhya times, it's just appearance of things, disappearance of things, and nothing's happening. Nothing's happening whatsoever to the soul who looks on. From the sky of awareness, in the sunlight of non-dual reality, humming with the word Om, and in the ocean of consciousness. Put those in the 4 corners, just to illustrate to you how the witness would look on this process constantly, melting, forming, melting, forming, with nothing happening. Nothing changing, really. It's all change, but nothing is changing. That's how Maya makes things look. See? So, if you have a death in the family, then you're to think he or she left their manifested form and they went into an unmanifested form. I'd better start looking around at some babies if I want to see them come back. See, where's this next incarnation? You know, in Tibet they've made that rather an art, especially for realized souls, because unrealized souls probably aren't going to be recognized. If they weren't recognized in their previous life, you think they're going to be recognized in their new life? Or they're just going to be one of the many, you see. But if you have a soul that's left an impression, you see, comes back, then, you see, you're looking for an incarnation. You're looking for a tulku, you're looking for a rinpoche, you're looking for a roshi, you're looking for a swami, you're looking for a great soul. And they will tell you, I went into unmanifested property for a while and gave up my form. And then I went into supremely unmanifested state, nirvikalpa. And then I looked down and out on these two realms, and I borrowed my form from here and made it manifest here. Everything that was potential for me as far as life, form, parents, countries, worlds, lokas, is all right in there, saved, you see, in a chest of drawers, a cosmic chest of drawers, all ironed, pressed, washed, see, ready for my use. And then when I manifested it, I came into the outer world. Here's my new body, here's my new set of parents, here's my new country, here's my work. And I offer it all to Divine Mother of the Universe, who oversees the whole thing, Shakta Advaita Vada. And I offer it with firm vow and commitment. And I'm teaching the Dharma. Come and watch. Come and listen. Let's invent a live streaming network and camera here. You know, make it manifest in the world so we can all come and listen to this. Celebrate it. There's all sorts of potential here. It's all the potential. All of this is held in potential. It's formless matter. And that's why you don't want to mistake unmanifested prakriti for God. It's been a tendency to do that. People think, they get into formless state and they say, this is it, I've found God. But they're just in the state of formless matter, in the realm of ideas and thoughts. These beings, some of them are called prakriti layas. That is, prakriti has dissolved everything. It's gone from manifested state into an unmanifested state. And they're very good at manipulating dreams, concepts, and so forth. They can create worlds, and in fact the idea of creating cloud castles in the sky is exactly what we mean. Ramakrishna used to say about it, the kid builds a castle on the beach, has very much fun doing it, but the most fun is when the ocean comes in, the tide raises and destroys the castle. He jumps around, claps his hands, and watches the destruction, you see. So he's actually more in enjoyment of destruction than he is of creation. He likes Shiva more than Brahma. Brahma was fun, you see. Vishnu was okay, but guess what? The whole thing gets destroyed, and I'm still alive. I am life itself. I am eternal life. See? That proves to me, at the end of a long cycle called pralaya or mahapralaya, that the soul has been there all the time watching it. And Vivekananda said very nicely, the soul picks up a book of nature, manifested and unmanifested, reads through it page by page, digests it all, puts it down, and he was the same soul before he picked up the book as when he put it down. He is the witness of all of nature, in both its modes. So there's a good meditation for you. See, sunlight of reality, sky of awareness, Om, the word, or the ocean of consciousness. Take a sun, an ocean, or anything that lasts a long time, meditate on it, and assign to it the appellation eternal, timeless, deathless, indivisible, any kind of word that you understand in your language, and then tag on at the end, Shivaham, Shivaham, I am that. Tattvamasi, I am that. I am that witness. There can be no other. Vivekananda said that. When I realize I'm Brahman, I am that, and so are you. All beings realize that. So that's a realization that is the truth, and it's there at the foundation of everyone. They just need to awaken to it, that's all. Just need to awaken to it. So this quote up here, Prakriti is the equilibrium of the three gunas, not evolved from any other origin, being the primordial source of all other evolutes. A greater amount of Prakriti is unmanifest. Purusha, the sentient conscience principle, is ever wise, ever pure, and ever free. So, if you want to put it in Kapila's own way, who is the sort of the father of the system, it says here, Sancharaha prati sancharaha. There is an evolution of transition, there is a chain of transition from unmanifested or non-evolved nature to manifested nature and its evolutes, ending in the grossest evolute called earth. There is also a reverse transition of evolutes ending in dissolution back into unmanifested Prakriti. So what we're calling evolution or creation, preservation, or destruction, or however we call it, is a cycle. It doesn't end. There's no beginnings, middles, and ends in this. There's just apparent beginning, middles, and ends. And it's explained by the teaching of manifested and unmanifested Prakriti. In other words, all that is perceived by the senses is finite. All that is beyond the senses is infinite. From the infinite, the finite has come. Yet being infinite, only infinite remains. So everything that came out of unmanifested Prakriti and took a form simply just gives up its form and goes back to unmanifested Prakriti. And that's true of all forms. But the formless essence, he says here, right? Purusha is the sentient conscience principle, ever wise, ever pure, and ever free. So that was the earliest way of thinking in India, Purusha Prakriti, two separate realities. The sentient consciousness and the insentient nature. And the only thing about it is that you're going to have to understand that nature divides into two, manifested and unmanifested. And don't mistake unmanifested nature for sentiency. It's formless matter. Your dreams, formless matter. Can't make dreams real. And when you're in deep sleep, you are in formless matter, up to your neck, maybe up to your nose. See? And if you're starting to manipulate it, you're up to it over your nose. You're drowning in it. And you can't get beyond my formless nature and my formless nature to the supremely unmanifested form, which is pure sentiency, which is the eternal Atman, which is Brahman. I and my Father are one style. So you can see there, just to continue everything here in Lord Brahma. See, we talk about the Trinity, right? So let's talk about the Lord Brahma part of the Trinity, that which is the great mind called Mahat. Mahat gives way to intellect, intellect to ego, then to mind, then to the Tanmatras. You remember the Tanmatras here, shown back here in this chart, you see. Then to the Tanmatras, then to the senses, then to the elements. And anytime that process is going on, the gunas are out of equilibrium. That is, Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva are thrown into equilibrium. It's called atomic chaos in the scriptures. Atomic chaos. And when it submerges, the gunas get back into equilibrium. It's when all of this does the reverse chain of evolutes back to the involution, and all worlds and all things go back to their potential. Remember, you are the sentient Purusha looking on to all this. If you get involved in this process, you can see long before Buddha talked about the Kala Chakra, there was a wheel here that ancient India knew about. And Maya and Samsara were just words that were coined in order to describe such processes. To a soul who is beyond process, is solved and ended all processes. Processes starting with thought, Mahat, great mind, and moving on through the intellect of the collective and cosmic individual, forming an ego around that thought, falling further into dual mind, manas, and then all of the things that came out of dual mind. I think I will create 5 senses and 5 objects to go with them and enjoy them. And forget everything. I'll even forget that there's any other thing than just Prakriti. I'll forget that it has an unmanifested side, and I'll just call this death. So life, birth, death all happens here, you see. And there is no such thing as return or cycle. That's how stultified I am in my thinking, how narrow, how stodgy, how limited, that I don't know anything about the bulk of the iceberg. I'm just looking from the top. There's a nice iceberg out there. I don't know that the major port of it is below the ocean. I need to put on a wetsuit, aqualung, go down and inspect that, see what it consists of. There I'll find the dinosaurs and Elvis and my ancestors, and you see, everything that ever lived that took a form is still there. It never died. So first thing it'll prove to me is I'm not a form. I'm not the body. I shouldn't get attached to bodies. And whatever made me attached to my body, such things as desire, ought to be purified. That is, ought to be either fulfilled, resisted, destroyed, surrendered, sublimated, or transcended. So don't say that you weren't given a solution for your desires when the seers came and gave you all that information. See? And you're still sitting there saying, oh, my desires are binding me down. See? Well, I think we covered everything on that chart, but that last bit, here's a nice song. Dive deep, O mind, dive deep in the ocean of God's beauty. That's by Kabir. And of course it goes on. There's several people in this room that can recite it for me by heart. It's such a beautiful poem. Part of SRV lore and history. Dive deep, O mind, dive deep in the ocean of God's beauty. If you descend to the uttermost depths, there you will find the gem of love. Go seek, O mind, go seek Vrindavan in your heart, where with his loving devotees, Sri Krishna sports eternally. Light up, O mind, light up wisdom's shining lamp, and let it burn unceasingly in your heart. Who is it that guides the solid boat of your body across this earth? It is your Guru, says Kabir. Meditate on his holy feet. Your Guru is pure sentiency. Your Guru is Purusha. See? Your Guru is Krishna, Ram, Sri Ramchandra, we just sang, is Christ, is Buddha, is Ramakrishna. These great beings that have come before you from age to age and have kept this Dharma alive so you can drink deep of that spring of Dharmic teachings. Ambrosic spring. Amrita, they call it in India. Amrit. So that little piece added at the end, but I think the most efficacious teaching was this idea of the great mind and how it, chain of evolutes comes from it. It's all thought projection. And then how it all returns back into its origin. See, that's the cycle. And this was the earliest homework done by one of India's greatest seers, Lord Kapila. People who followed this with the 24 cosmic principles that are all enumerated here, 5, 10, 15, 24, you see. People who followed that later and who worked it into their philosophical systems then saluted Samkhya. saluted Lord Kapila, and added to it their own touch. When the Shaivites, the worshippers of Shiva, got a hold of his ancient system, they added 12 more cosmic principles on top. So 24 became 36. And those 12 principles were more about the causal body. This very subtle, can't say subtle, this very, very indeterminate prong of Shiva's trident, the causal worlds. You're talking about things like Ishvara and Purusha, and, well, Purusha could be a gateway into subtle to causal, but things like raga, attraction, and kala and kalas, time and cycles of time, all these very, very subtle levels of laws called spandas. Spandas means vibrating spheres. So they had a word for it, spandas. These are internal worlds. You could call them lokas and look at the Russian dolls chart, but in Shaivism I have a chart too that lists the 12 spandas that are stacked on top of that 24 cosmic principle system that was Kapila's original offering. So very, very deep thinkers, long-lived thinkers, ancient thinkers, beyond thinkers. They weren't just there to think, they were there to realize the thought that occurred to them. As if thought, with the intellect that brought it to them, were very close to God, very close to God's mind. In fact, the ego was not in the picture anymore. They didn't say, oh, that's my thought. Because if they said, that's my thought, then it went this way. You see? But if they said, that's not my thought, that belongs in a higher position, they went to the intellect and then to the Mahat. That's the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. See? And then they offered themselves into Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, the Trinity, and they realized the Devatma Shakti in everything. As Svetashvatara Upanishad puts it, Ya Te Dhyan Yoga Nugata Apashyan Devatma Shaktim Svagunayar Nagudam Yaha Karanani Nikilani Tani Kalatma Yuktanya Adidishtat Yekaha. Practicing the art of meditation, the divine seers of India saw the Devatma Shakti, the divine being in everything, which, though veiled by all the modes of nature, name, form, time, space, causality, was nevertheless one and indivisible, and which had been incomprehensible earlier due to the limitation of their own intellects. See, when they got over the problem of the intellect, then all of a sudden they got to God's mind. See, they dissolved their own mind like a sugar cube into the cosmic mind, and saw all of manifested and unmanifested Prakriti there. Manifested and unmanifested Prakriti. At the feet of the goddess, if you want to put it that way. So with 5 or 10 minutes left and have ended a chart, then I think we will end just slightly early here, send you off thinking about icebergs. And next week I'll send you off thinking about little Russian dolls. So you see we have lots of very fun and deep and profound things to offer you in SRV through the Dharmic teachings that we transmit here through the grace of our teachers, and particularly in this particular loka or location, through the grace of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Sri Sharda Devi, and Swami Vivekananda and his 16 direct disciples. So we will end here with a chant and then return next Sunday for more live streaming, both satsang in the morning, live streamed, and class in the afternoon. Om Tachnayo, Om Tachnayo Ravrini Mahe, Gatung Yagyaya, Gatung Ye Nupataye, Daivi Swastarastu Naha, Swastir Manusebhyaha, Urdvam Jagatu Bhesajam, Samno Astu Dvipade Samchatushpate, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May we make a sincere offering into the Great Self. May we always revere this offering and always revere the Lord and Mother of all sacrifices. May divine blessings be upon us. May peace be into the entire human race. May healing, well-being, and prosperity also then abide among us. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om.